The topic of this video is around creating and managing donations. And so we'll talk about searching for donations, reviewing donation details, the difference between single and regular donations, and a number of other topics which will be related to this subject. So the first thing is how to take a donation. The first thing we can do is there's two ways that one can take a donation. One is by going to the account of the donor that you wish to take a donation from. So one can do that, for example, by going to the search account section, searching for the person or individual that they want to take a donation from. So let's say John Baker. And then from this screen, they can click on the right, enter donation. And as you'll see, you'll come to the enter donation screen with the single and regular giving available. Alternatively, from the dashboard, one can just press create and select enter donation. And on the left side, they will choose the account of the person they want to take a donation from. So in this case, we've said John Baker. And so we select the account, and then you'll see here that the same screen is also available at this point. So now on this form, the first thing to notice on the right is a number of different currencies. Now this depends upon your subscription. Of course, if you're based in the UK, then it will default to GBP. And if you're based in the US, it will default to USD. But of course, you can take donations in different currencies depending on what was configured at the beginning of the onboarding process. You will then see the option of a single and a regular giving donation. A single donation being that which is one-off donation taken at a single point of time, whereas regular giving is something which can be done monthly or quarterly or yearly, and can be done via direct debit in the UK or by a normal payment or continuous payments with other card payment companies. And we'll talk about each in this video. So if we stay with single donations, so if we come down, we'll come to the concept of allocations. Now, allocations are essentially the fund or the projects that you're wanting to raise money for. And so this defaults to this. And so when you click here, you'll see a number of different projects or funds which have been pre-configured. And we'll talk about this in the admin section later in this video in terms of how to configure these different projects. But let's say, for example, we choose Build a School. And once we have selected that, then you may see different fund dimensions as per your subscription. In this case, we have the project, the location, and something called stipulation. And so we may choose, for example, a country such as Gambia, and we may say general. And we can see here that is defaulted to £10,000 because in the back end of the system, it was configured that a school would be for £10,000. Now, this may be £0, it could be another amount, but this is configurable. So you can change this, for example, to £500 if you wish. And you will see on the right, the figure updates as necessary. There's also an option to add receipt notes if one wants to add, and this can be displayed on the receipt sent to the donor, but it's best to check with N3O that this is configured for you accordingly. Now, at this point, we have, as you can see at the bottom, a number of options here. These show we can add another line. If we wish, we can add another type of fund, so we can say there's another project that we wish to add. And so we'll add another fund here. And we'll take, for example, cholera project, and we'll say where most needed, and we'll say general. And so we will put this for, say, £60. And as you can see, this amount is now updated. Now, the donation date here is set as necessary. We can press save and continue to payment. We can add attributions here, which again will be covered, but again, I'll add it here now. I'll add an attribution, which essentially means that where do we want to attribute this donation to in terms of a marketing or fundraising attribution. So we can click here and we can add attributions, and we'll say, for example, that this is allocated to, let's just say, an event. And we'll choose an event. Let's just say an event in Birmingham, for example. And so this means that this £560 donation has been attributed to the event attributions set by the organization and the events that were taking place in Birmingham, for example. And this will be covered in more detail in a further video. Now, coming down, you'll see now the option for the different ways of taking payment. Now, again, this is dependent upon how your system is configured. But here you can see, for example, we can add the card payment. So if you're using Stripe or you may be using another payment gateway, you will add the cardholder details here, the card number, expiry, etc. And you have the option to save this card to make another payment in the future, and you would press enter donation. Alternatively, you can take cash or check. So if it's cash, you will take you can add the received by, so you can say the name of the individual. Now here you'll notice two elements. One is already banked and one is auto deposit. Already banked is unticked and generally means that you've taken the cash but you haven't put it into the bank, and so keeping this unticked will make sure that this is kind of not closed off until you've gone to the bank. Auto deposit allows you to create a new deposit in Tally, and this again will be covered in another video, but this really means that if you have taken, say, a £20 donation, then if you have already banked unticked, it means that it's not been banked, it is deposited into a paying in batch within Tally, and so this will allow you to go to the bank with a number of cash or checks which will allow you to deposit them as per the necessary amounts. However, this will be covered in a future video. And finally, you can attribute it to the relevant office that you may have as part of the organization. The same goes for checks. Checks can also be added here with the check dates and check numbers, and the same kind of process is followed in that way. Bank transfers are also available for organizations who have bank transfer payment methods. Again, you may decide to either enter or key in bank transfers into this system manually if there's not many in the year, and you can add, for example, the narratives as necessary and the receipt book numbers. Or the other option is you can import a number in one go, but this allows you to do it manually if you wish to do individual ones. Finally, you have agency income. Agency income again is other types of methods which are not within cards or cash or check, and these can be crowdfunding methods, or it could be something like PayPal. Again, you can select this as per the configuration in your system, and for each particular payment service provider there is the reference which is unique to them. So for example, PayPal have the transaction ID, which is a 17-character ID. This is generally asked or sought in the system in order so that your financial team can reconcile accordingly. And so whichever one you choose and you fill in, then you can press enter donation and that will process. Now, before we continue, it's worth coming back to the regular giving. So in the case that we don't want to take a single donation, we can take regular giving. So at this point we can choose regular giving. I'm going to switch the donation type for the purpose of this demo. And we will have the same options in terms of adding different projects, etc. So again, we can add the cholera project, and let's just say in Ukraine, and we can add general, and we're going to just continue with the £10. Now when you press save and continue, we will bypass the attributions. Here you'll see three options instead, and because this is continuous payment, so that this means that the options will be slightly different. Either it can be a card, so as you're aware, card payments can be continuous, for example with Stripe as a continuous payment authority. The same thing will be done here. You'll notice at the bottom you'll have payment options, so this can be annually, monthly, quarterly, weekly will also be added in due time. And here we can add the collection dates. Now collection dates are configured at the beginning as per your payment provider, so some may have multiple dates, some individuals may only have the first of the month, or some may only have two, such as the 1st and the 15th. However, it is best to speak to your account manager if you wish to have this change. We'll also have the first payment date, so once you collect, or when you suggest, for example, the payment date to be the 1st, this will automatically default to the next available payment date on the 1st, which is in this case the 1st of July, as we are today on the 17th of June. Now direct debit is relatively similar. However, there is a slight difference with the direct debit for UK clients, in that if you choose a direct debit, then at this point you will actually press the Pay with Go Cardless link here in order to fill in the necessary information. Now, just to clarify, what this means is that you will put in the Go Cardless or the direct debit information on Go Cardless. However, because Go Cardless has been integrated with Engage, we will be reverted back to Engage to fulfill the payment. And this will make sure that the donation item or the project that you are specifying to be where you're collecting for will be associated with that direct debit mandate. So here we can click Pay with Go Cardless. You will be directed out of the application to set up the direct debit. We press OK. And so in this case, it is now sending us to a different window. Now, in this case, you will fill in the details for the on behalf of the individual, taking their email address, town, city, etc. And you will continue from here. And at this point, it will also, so this is test data. And so now we will have the sort code and the account number to add here. Now at this point, once you have added the account number and sort code, you will press continue. And so in this case, we're not fulfilling a direct debit, but what would happen at this point then is that you would fill in the regular payment option, whether it's annual, monthly or quarterly, add your payment date that you wish to take the payment, and then you would press enter donation. Now, for us to see what that looks like, if we go to the Giving tab, and so it's actually first worth mentioning that once you process the donation, then automatically an email will be sent to the relevant donor with a receipt as per your configuration in the system. And if you're also wanting printed documentation or a PDF to be printed to be sent to the individual, that will also be sent to your associated print queue if it is configured in your system, and that will be covered in another video. Now, to go to the list of giving, we can then press Giving, or the list of the donations, and we will see here the donations at this point. And we talked about before that these are the regular givings which are created, and they're clear here. And on the bottom we will have the regular or the single donations which have been complete so far. So in terms of seeing what has been given previously, we can click on this plus icon, and we can see here that on the 26th of May that a donation has been given for the education fund for £200. Now, it's worth noting here that if you wish to see more details about this particular donation, we can click on the reference number, and this will allow us to deep dive into the nature of this donation. We can see that who had entered the donation from the staff member and what date it was and the status of it, whether it was complete, whether it's awaiting payment, whether it failed. And on the right, we have a number of indicators here of how much was allocated or left to allocate. This is slightly more detailed, but there is the opportunity to take payments but not fully allocate them. But in this case, we have fully allocated £200 and £200 has been paid. You will also see here at the bottom the allocation, what it was for. If this needs to be changed in the future, it can be changed if you wish to do that. At the bottom, you'll see the payment. And so here we can actually see the reference number of the payment and the method of the how it was paid. And again, if we wish to, we can drill deep into this particular payment and see a bit more detail as necessary in terms of the deposit number. If this was a Stripe donation or a card donation, then we would have the full log of the transaction ID and all the other relevant information necessary if you wish to go into more detail. Now, it's worth mentioning here very briefly that here on this particular page, if a refund is required, then we can click on options and press request refund. We will cover this more in the financial element of the video in a future video, but this is worth mentioning here that the refund option is here for refunds. The final thing to mention then is if we just go back to the donor, is there is sorry, onto the giving. We will also be able to see the receipts and other communications for this particular donation. So this whole page is essentially about a donation which has taken place. We can see what emails had gone out for this donation. In this case, it was suppressed due to the fact that maybe the GDPR conditions were not met for this individual in that they had opted out for fundraising or receipting emails. And finally, we have the attributions here. So it is possible at this point that if you have taken a donation and you wish to add a new attribution or amend an attribution, it can still be done from here through the update attributions element, which we'll talk about in a future video. The final point to mention about taking a donation is that it is possible to take an anonymous donation. So there are cases whereby you do not know the donor. And so in order to take an anonymous donation, we can go to create and enter donation. And instead of choosing an account, if we click here, we can say make an anonymous donation. And this will allow us to process an anonymous donation as necessary, which will be taken in the system and can be searched at a later stage. Now, the next part of the video is primarily for administrators, and it deals with the configuration set for donations and donation items. So if we go to admin and we go to giving, now you'll see a number of options here. The first thing we'll start off is with fund dimensions. So fund dimensions would have been explained during the onboarding process, but very briefly, fund dimensions is the basic framework whereby which you take donations into the system. And these are set during onboarding and after discussion with yourselves as an organization. Now, in this case, you can see we have a number of fund dimensions here. One we have is a location. In this case, we also have theme and we have a stipulation. So just focusing on the first two types, which is quite common amongst organizations, we can see here that we have restricted options. So for example, Ukraine, Tanzania, Gambia, and these can be added as necessary. And then we have an unrestricted option of where most needed. The second element is the theme, and theme can refer to sectors or themes within an organization, which can be education, child welfare, food security. And so the projects that you as an organization will raise funds for will typically fall under some of these different fund dimensions. And we'll explain further on in this video as to why this is important when looking at fund availability. Also for theme, we have an unrestricted option of general. Now, as an organization, the administrator has the ability to add fund dimensions as necessary and edit them. So in order to add a new location or a new theme, one can come to the side here and on the side click edit. And they'll have the list of the current dimensions that they have set. So if they wish to add something else, we can add another one. We can add United Kingdom, for example. And if we press save, then this will save as an additional location as part of this fund dimension. What we advise internally is, of course, that where possible, don't delete any dimensions without speaking to N3O first. Primarily is because your fund availability and fund accounts will be based on these particular dimensions. And also your unrestricted options should generally stay the same. If you do wish to change something, as in not adding but change or delete, then do let us know in advance and we can facilitate for that for you accordingly. Now, the next element which is important to be aware of are the concept of donation items. Now, donation items essentially are the projects or the funds that you are hoping to raise money for. And as you would have seen at the beginning of the video, we had, for example, build a school, which is like a project or an education fund. These were the specific things that you're raising money for. Now, in this particular table, we have a list of these donation items. And as you can see, they are mapped against these dimensions that were set in the previous screen. And so we can see a build a school is available in Gambia, Pakistan, and former countries. It is aligned to the education theme, and of course it has various stipulations. This will allow you as an organization to see across the framework of education, across the different themes and locations, your fund balances and fund availability, which is useful when allocating for projects. Now, in order to add a new donation item, one can click add donation item, and you can add the name. So in this case, we will call, for example, a winter distribution fund, or we can call it a winter fund. We can add any notes in here. We can explain what this is about, and then we can add the donation types. Typically, there's three available: a single donation, regular donation, or a scheduled donation, which are donations which are scheduled at certain times, which are not just normal monthly or quarterly regular donations. So in this case, we'll choose all three. And we will then, the tax relief rate refers to whether this is eligible for tax relief. In the majority of cases, one will click as full. There will be cases where you choose zero, and they are cases whereby you may be selling a ticket for an event, and so you will not be claiming tax or gift aid, from the government in the UK or tax relief subsidies in other countries. So you may use zero, but in the majority of cases, you will probably use full. Now, in this particular case, then we're looking down the form, we can see we have a winter fund, and now we want to allocate the fund dimensions. This basically means to say that the winter fund that you are collecting money for what locations and for what theme is it eligible? And so we may say that we only want to do projects or winter projects in two locations, in Turkey and Tanzania. And this will mean that then any donations collected will only fall within Tanzania or Turkey for the winter fund. You will not be able to process a donation for the winter fund in another location. And so this is useful for earmarking or for ring fencing donation types as necessary. We then choose a theme, and so one can choose a theme which is suitable for the winter fund. We may say here, for example, in this case, the general one, and then we can add the stipulation, let's say general as well. Now, coming up to the pricing element is interesting, as this allows you now to set pricing according to the donation item you wish. Now, there are three options here. One is to keep the winter fund or the donation item completely open, meaning that you are happy to receive either or process a £1 donation, a £100 donation. It doesn't matter. You're having this as an open fund. And that's the default which is set within the system. Now, the other options that you have are to suggest or fix a price for the donation item. So, for example, if we click this, we will say that for the winter fund, we are wanting as a standard, say £50 to be donated to this particular fund. By pressing 50 or choosing 50, we are saying that every time someone tries to process a winter fund donation on the system, then this will automatically populate with £50. Now, it's important to note that the £50 that is set here is not necessarily hard-coded, meaning that with just this option selected of suggest or fix a price and fixed price not fixed, so this is as it is, this means that it will populate with £50. However, you as a user are able to manipulate it to any other amount. So you may change it to £150, you may change it to £200. It is quite flexible. The third option, which is the highest level, is one where an individual will fix a price, and so he will select fixed price, which means that this can only be for £50. It cannot be for any other amount. It has to be for this amount, and so this means that the user cannot change this, and this is useful for particular projects such as water wells which have fixed pricing, such as £1,500, or for any other projects, maybe building a school classroom which in advance has a particular amount, and so you don't want to take any other amount apart from that which has been specified. Now, it's important to note that the £50 that is set here is not necessarily hard-coded, meaning that with just this option selected of suggest or fix a price and fixed price not fixed, so this is as it is, this means that it will populate with £50. However, you as a user are able to manipulate it to any other amount. So you may change it to £150, you may change it to £200. It is quite flexible. The third option, which is the highest level, is one where an individual will fix a price, and so he will select fixed price, which means that this can only be for £50. It cannot be for any other amount. It has to be for this amount, and so this means that the user cannot change this, and this is useful for particular projects such as water wells which have fixed pricing, such as £1,500, or for any other projects, maybe building a school classroom which in advance has a particular amount, and so you don't want to take any other amount apart from that which has been specified. The final section of the administration tab relates to the payment methods. So when you go back to admin, giving, and the payment methods, This will already have been preset most likely during the onboarding, but it shows which payment methods are active within the system. And so we have here, for example, bank transfers, card, so it may be Stripe or Payo, it could be any other payment provider, cash and check, direct debit, which is either Go Cardless or Smart Debit for UK clients, and then agency income, which are related to crowdfunding entities such as Just Giving, Launch Good, and also others such as PayPal. So the administrator can see here if any of these are missing, and if so, then they can get in contact with N3O in order to add the relevant one which is suitable for them.